Welcome, and I'm very happy to see all of you today. And you perhaps know who I am, or you've heard my name, because I'm Dr. Job Holmes, and I guess, even though I've been dead for a long time, my name's still known in town because of the historical society, mostly. Um, but this is my wife Vesta, and Vesta came with me today, and I don't know, some of you may have been here other years, and we never know who gets to choose the people that are going to have the opportunity to come back up above the ground. We're always happy to be here. And I don't know if anybody's mentioned this. I almost think nobody has, unless you've been to see the Sherman Brothers, and we never know what the Sherman Brothers might say. Mr. Churchill says all sorts of things, so I'm not sure. He might have told you already. Usually, usually we have a get-together after everybody's gone, and we have a really good time. We put off going back down there for as long as we possibly can. But Vesta had been here before, and of course, when you haven't been above ground for a long time, then seeing the sky and the leaves and hearing them rustle, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so she just wanted to be able to come back another time, and since I was coming, then she was able to come with me. Now I did ask her, I don't want you to think that I did not ask her and that I'm just doing all the talking. I asked her if there was anything that she wanted to tell you, and you did say that you didn't want to say anything. But you haven't changed your mind. If you have, that's fine.
No, I still don't want to say much, other than there isn't much room to say anything, because he has so much to tell you.
There.
Yes.
Or he just talks a lot.
He does talk
Yes,
a lot, but he
yeah.
has a lot to be proud of.
So, well, I think I was asked to come today, particularly because there is some talk today about the hospital and about the hospital starting here in Calais. And so I know that Dr. Mine is here. I've had a very interesting conversation with Dr. Miner because he showed me things I've never seen before. He had a stethoscope, and he could hear people's hearts, and he let me listen, and I was fascinated. And he told me about medicines like penicillin that would help people with infections and those kinds of things I never heard of. And it made me just wonder if I'd only been born a little bit later or lived a little bit longer, whether I could have helped people a little bit more. I don't know, but it's fascinating for me to think about, and it's very interesting for me to have been able to have the opportunity to talk with him, because there was no hospital here. And so I think I was asked to talk to you today so I could tell you a little bit about early medicine, which was different from what Dr. Miner and the nurse who's here was able to do. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the third doctor to practice here in Calais. I was the third doctor. There were two that were before me. One was a man named Shillamette Whipple. He was the doctor, and he was the doctor for 2 or 3 years, and then he had this idea about building a canal from Magarowak to Robinson, and it didn't work out very well. But he did stay around town for a number of years, at least up until 1840 or so. Then he returned to Boston and went back to being a doctor. Well, the second doctor was Vesta's brother Cyrus, and so he was the second doctor, Dr. Cyrus Hamlin, and then I was the third. Before I tell you about how we got here, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and my family. I wasn't born here in Calais. I was born in 1799, and that certainly seems a very long time ago at this point. My father was a man named Captain James Holmes, and he was in the Revolutionary War, and he fought in several of the battles in the Revolution. And when the war was over, my father went back to his hometown, to the place where he was born, which was Plymouth, Massachusetts. Now, I think perhaps because of the adventures that he'd had in the war and all the places he'd seen, he thought that he wanted, he didn't want to just stay in the place where he had grown up. He wanted a new sort of life. Now he'd heard about this place in upper Massachusetts. You know, remember in those days, Maine was upper Massachusetts. So he was just going from one part of the state to another part of the state. And he'd heard about this place, and it was called Bog Brook Plantation. And he wanted to have a farm, and he had heard that there was good farmland in Bog Brook Plantation, and that might be a good place to get started. So, as the family legend goes, he put everything that he had into a knapsack, and he walked 175 miles from Plymouth, Massachusetts to Bog Brook Plantation, which became Hebron, Maine. And that's where I was born, as I said, in 1799, in the farm that my father built. Now, after my father got there, then he met my mother, and they were married. My mother was a woman named Jerusha Rawson, and they married and settled in the farm, and they had eventually 9 children, and I was one of them. But as I grew up, I was very interested in what could be done to help people who were ill, or how you could make people feel better, or how you could cure things. And so I didn't really want to work on the farm. I didn't mind the work. I'd grown up doing it. We all pitched in and helped on the farm, but I managed to get myself to Bowdoin College in Brunswick. And there I attended lectures at Maine Medical School and graduated in 1826. And so by 1826, I was a doctor. And I didn't come immediately to Calais. I began by going back to Hebron. But in Hebron, they had a doctor, and they really didn't need another one. So I thought, well, I'll just go next door to a neighboring town. So I went over to Paris. Now, I already knew someone in Paris. I knew Vesta's brother, Cyrus Hamlin. We'd gone to Bowdoin together. I was ahead of him, but we were still there at the same time, and we were good friends. And so I went over there where he lived, and that's how I met Vesta. And after some courtship, we managed to fall in love and get married. And we stayed there for a while. We liked it there, didn't we?
Sure.
We did. It was
a good start. Good
and,
place to start.
And then one day, a letter came. Remember that letter?
I do.
We,
It's an exciting
didn't
day.
we talk about that for a long time?
Big decision.
It was a big decision. We didn't know what to do. We got a letter from Vesta's brother, Cyrus Hamlin, and he was practicing medicine here, as I told you. Now, he was the second doctor, and he just bought the house from Shulamit Whipple. Shulamit Whipple was first doctor, and he had a house, and Cyrus took over his practice and took over his house too. And so he wanted us to take over his practice and his house. And so we thought about it, but we'd heard a lot about Calais. And we'd heard that, you know, it was a really busy place, and a lot was going on. There was a lot of building, there were a lot of people. It was growing, and we were in a little farming community, and we thought, well, we were young enough, let's go and have a change.
Right.
So we got on a sailing ship, and we came up the river, and we never looked back, did we?
No, sirree.
Nope,
we stayed right here.
We stayed right here, and we settled in the cottage. Had a central chimney, and it had 4 fireplaces, and that's how we kept warm and did our cooking and all that sort of thing. And so we lived there from 1835 until 1850, and then we were doing pretty well. By then we built a pretty grand house
yes.
after that and
Had a
moved
good
out of the
practice.
cottage. But we kept the cottage. We didn't leave it. Now, I'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell you a little something else. When you go up to see Dr. Miner, he's going to show you his little black bag. Well, I never really heard of a little black bag. You know, he told me that he took it with him when he went on trips to see patients, when he went to make house calls. And so it was a little black leather bag. It was really quite nice. It had some kind of device on it that closed it. I'm not sure he pulled it, but I'm not quite sure what it was. But anyway, I thought, well, if he's going to show you his little black bag, I should show you mine. And so this really is my little black bag. This is Dr. Holmes' little black bag. This is it. I took it with me. Every time I went to see a patient, I took this with me. Now, his little black bag had all kinds of things in it, like that stethoscope I was talking about. My little black bag was a little wooden box, and it had all these medicines in it. Some of them were patent medicines, some of them were things that I mixed up myself, some were even things that I grew with herbs and so forth that I knew would have some effect on helping people with certain difficulties. Excuse me. I need something for a cough. And so this is what I took with me. Now, I practiced medicine by myself for a number of years, from 1835 until, probably the late 1840s. And at that time, Charlie Swan, he lived up on Grosvenor Street, and he decided sometime around the middle 40s, I guess, that he wanted to be a doctor too, and he went off to Bowdoin College, and he graduated. And so when he came home, he came into practice with me. Now, I was just looking through some old journals, and I discovered that I found these old journals, and I discovered this one that shows that this is when I was in practice by myself. It just says Job Holmes Journal in Calais, and so this is the 1840s, and I had started this journal, and I would just write things. I would write who I had seen. In fact, on this one, it said that I went to see Francis Swan, who was, of course, was Dr. Swan's father, and it says I gave medicine for his wife, and it was 50 cents. So I think 50 cents seems like an awful lot for me to be charging, but I must have done it. Maybe that's how I got that big house, I don't know. And then this journal I found was after I went into practice with Charlie Swan, because it says Holmes and Swan, has both. But you know, I also discovered that the children got a hold of this one. Oh, I know. I looked in it and I thought, oh my God, how am I ever supposed to look and see where I went to visit people? Look what they did to it. They pasted pictures all over the back of it. But, you know, that's what kids will do sometimes, and so that's what happened. Well, Charlie Swan was, he was a great doctor. He was a great young fella, and we were really happy in practice together. But I have to tell you, I don't want to say